Forced back into the wealthy family, Victor had to fulfill his arranged marriage with me. However, his heart always belonged to Emma, that hypocritical woman. Even my son Lucas, whom I almost died giving birth to, spent all day around her, calling her mommy. On my 25th birthday, I waited alone at home until late at night. Just after midnight, Emma's social media post popped up. Victor was smearing birthday cake on her and son Lucas's faces, and they looked as happy as a real family. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my suitcase and received a call from Victor before boarding the plane. He sounded furious, and in the background, son Lucas was crying, wanting the breakfast I made. I calmly said, "I'm leaving. Look over the documents and sign them." Those were the divorce papers I had already signed. I thought, without me, they would be happier. Ding! Cuckoo Story reminds you to subscribe to the channel to watch more videos. On my 25th birthday, I got up early as usual to make breakfast. When I sent Victor and son Lucas out the door, I hesitated for a long time before saying, "Today is my birthday. Can you come home early?" I knew it was also his first love, Emma's, birthday. To make Victor choose between us was humiliating myself, but I couldn't help it. When the doctor issued the critical condition notice, Grandma Rose wiped away my tears and whispered, "Don't cry. Grandma promised to celebrate your birthday with you and won't leave early." Before the car started, I chased after it and begged through the window, "Just come back for dinner. That's all I ask." I was met with two identical cold faces. The next second, the car sped away, leaving me standing there for a long time. They hadn't explicitly refused, which meant there was still hope. In the afternoon, I went to the supermarket to buy Victor and son Lucas's favorite dishes, and then went to the hospital to pick up Grandma Rose. By the time the food was on the table, it was already dark. Grandma Rose carefully took out Lucas's gift from her bag, a limited edition toy race car. "Lucas will be back soon," she said, her eyes fixed on the door. I urged Grandma Rose to eat first, but she stubbornly shook her head. "Birthdays are meant to be celebrated with family, so we can't start eating first." From 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., the food got cold, but the father and son were still nowhere to be seen. After countless calls to Victor, I finally got through, and there was laughter and cheerfulness on the other end. "What's wrong?" Victor said impatiently. I forced a bitter smile and said, "Grandma Rose is here. Please come home and celebrate my birthday with me, okay?" "Jessica, don't get carried away," he sneered. "Today is Emma's birthday. Don't ruin my fun." Yes, Emma was his childhood sweetheart. And I was just the woman who ruined their lives. I stared blankly at the glass door of the balcony and saw Grandma Rose's worried eyes. How unfilial I was to still be worrying her. "Let's eat birthday cake." Emma's sweet voice came from the phone. "How about the first piece for our Lucas?" Then, I heard my son's childish voice, "Thank you, and Emma, you're the best. I wish you were my mom." A pain shot through my heart, as if an invisible hand was squeezing it. Victor seemed to want to say something, but I didn't want to hear it anymore. I quickly hung up the phone, desperately blocking out everything from the receiver. Back in the living room, Grandma Rose looked at me with concern, and I reluctantly explained, "Victor is too busy with work, and Lucas has to go to tutoring." She nodded slowly, seemingly believing me, and gently pulled me down to sit. We ate the birthday cake face to face. The birthday cake was sickeningly sweet, but it made my chest feel heavy. The soft light reflected on her silver hair, like a candle about to burn out. "Jessica, you must be happy," she said gently. "You are Grandma's darling, Before she could finish, she suddenly coughed violently, and the hand that had just been stroking my cheek fell limply. When Grandma Rose was rushed into the emergency room, I collapsed on the chair in the hallway, sobbing uncontrollably. Suddenly, my phone lit up. Emma updated a video. The scene was the warm family scene I had once dreamed of. Lucas happily shouted, "Happy birthday, beautiful Aunt Emma." As he spoke, he leaned over and kissed Emma's cheek. I subconsciously touched my face. Compared to Emma's radiant appearance, my face was only marked with time and exhaustion after giving birth to Lucas. The camera turned to Victor. The usually stern man now had cake all over his face, and his eyes sparkled with laughter, so he could be so gentle when he was with Emma. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, and I turned off the screen. The light in the emergency room was still on, stinging my eyes. At some point, I fell into a daze on the hard bench. In my dream, I went back to when I was 17. At that time, I was wearing open-toed shoes, trying to hide my tattered self-esteem. 17-year-old Victor stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a gray turtleneck sweater like a prince. He asked me in surprise if I was cold and took me into the living room. My heart raced as I followed him. Then Emma appeared, crying and kneeling in front of me. "Jessica, I'll give everything back to you." From then on, Victor's eyes were filled with disgust. "Madam, we've done our best. You can go in to say goodbye now." The nurse's words pulled me back to reality from my dream. When the staff pushed Grandma Rose towards the crematorium, the moment the white cloth was lifted, the flickering flames reflected on her pale face, I finally realized that the only person in this world who truly loved me had turned into a box of ashes. I numbly carried the urn out of the funeral home. When I got home, the housekeeper was stunned. "Madam, why are you back?" Mr. Victor said he was taking the young master on a trip. I immediately understood that they had gone on vacation with Emma. In the past, I would have lost control and screamed and called to question him, but now I only felt tired. I quickly packed my luggage and stood at the door of the mansion, taking one last look at the house I had lived in for 6 years. Scenes from our wedding night flashed through my mind. A night that should have been sweet, but was ruined by a phone call from Emma. She cried on the phone, saying she had been kidnapped, and Victor was so anxious that he kicked me out of the car. I walked for hours in high heels, and when I got home, my heels were covered in blood. Just after I took a shower and lay down on the bedroom, Victor stormed in, his eyes red, and questioned, "Jessica, I told you, Emma is my bottom line. How dare you hurt her?" He said Emma's hand was ruined and she could no longer paint. It was the first time I had seen him cry. That night, he treated me like an emotionless machine, but refused to kiss me, only burying his teeth into my collarbone, his eyes full of disgust. "Isn't this what you wanted? To be my wife, isn't that enough?" His eyes were as disgusted as they were the year I was brought home, making me feel incredibly worthless. The car horn interrupted my memory, and the driver was waiting downstairs. The train sped forward, and the scenery outside the window blurred into a haze. After eating several containers of ramen noodles and staying up for 2 nights, the train entered the western states. On the vast green land, occasionally cattle and sheep ran by. When I was a child, Grandma Rose often told me about her youth in the Northwest, and now I was finally bringing her home. As I got off the train, the crowd jostled me and my phone rang. It was Victor. I guessed he was back from vacation and finally remembered me. "Where are you? Let's talk about the divorce." His voice was calm. I didn't answer, but made a request. "The divorce papers are already signed and on the desk in the bedroom." "What did you say?" His voice wavered for a moment, probably thinking I was joking. After all, every time he mentioned divorce in the past, I would cry and beg him to stay. At that time, I just wanted Grandma Rose to be at peace. Now that Grandma Rose was gone, nothing mattered anymore. "Jessica, are you done making a scene? Lucas has a stomachache and is clamoring for the porridge you make." He changed the subject, his tone impatient. "Let's get divorced." "Jessica, do you think you can get my attention this way? It's just a birthday. I'll make it up to you." 6 years, and Victor still treated my departure as a joke. No need. The divorce papers have already been signed and dated. He finally realized I wasn't joking and sneered. "Don't forget the prenuptial agreement. If you keep making a scene, you won't get a penny." Yes, he always thought I was greedy. In the past, I would have apologized humbly and backed down, but now, Grandma Rose was gone. What did money mean to me? Once, I naively thought I could move him with love, exhausting myself to warm his heart, tolerating his excessive behavior for the sake of our child, and making excuses for him time and time again, swallowing the bitterness in my stomach. But now, this father and son were not worth me compromising anymore. I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore and hung up the phone. The world was finally quiet, leaving only occasional voice messages from my son, from being commanding at first, to softening his tone later, and then crying, "Mom, what are you doing? Dad works so hard. Mom, when are you coming back?" I glanced at the messages and deleted them all. As for Victor, he must be waiting for me to regret it and beg him to take me in, but how could I regret it? After leaving them, I felt like I had broken free from a stagnant pool and was reborn. In the following months, I taught children in a rural elementary school. Before I knew it, New Year arrived. The mayor invited me to his house to make pizza with the children. Although resources were scarce, they slaughtered a pig and took out their most precious things to entertain me. Amidst the laughter and cheerfulness of the children, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Victor. After answering, there was a long silence on the other end before a dry voice came through. "Happy New Year." The sound of fireworks drowned out his words. I thought the phone had cut off, but he cleared his throat, sounding somewhat awkward. "Grandpa wants to see you." "You didn't tell Grandpa we're getting divorced?" I asked. "Jessica, the company is about to go public. Can't you consider the big picture?" "So that's how it was." "No. You said from the beginning that this marriage was a mistake. Now, I don't love you anymore and don't want to continue," I said decisively. 6 years ago, a marriage contract tied me and Victor together. I should have understood long ago that he married me not because of love, but for the sake of family cooperation. No matter how favored Emma was in front of Grandpa, she was still an outsider. When the family needed me again, they remembered me again. I didn't want to get involved in other people's emotional entanglements and wanted to leave completely, but Grandma Rose was sick and needed money, and my so-called biological father threatened and forced me. The night before leaving Grandma Rose, they drugged the milk I drank before going to bedroom. That night, I slept with Victor. Perhaps this memory stimulated Victor, his voice suddenly angry. "Jessica, you..." I didn't want to listen anymore and was about to hang up when I heard Lucas's urgent voice, "Mom." His tone was full of anxiety, and when I didn't respond, he awkwardly added, "I'm sick." In the past, when he was sick, I would have been anxious and taken care of him all night. Now, I only said, indifferently, "Mom, when are you coming back?" The child's emotions couldn't be hidden, and Lucas's voice was tearful. "Why aren't you replying to my messages? It's so cold outside." "Lucas, come in." Emma's concerned voice came. So the divorce procedures weren't even completed, and she was already spending Christmas/New Year at his house. The cold wind stung my face, and I just wanted to go inside to warm up. "I won't bother you." "Wait." Victor hurriedly explained. She came on her own. Now he would explain? In the past, when I was in pain over these details, he would only watch coldly and say I was a crazy woman. "Mom, Dad and I have prepared a birthday gift for you." Lucas's childish voice rang out. "Birthday gift?" Half a year ago, when I was organizing clothes, I found a gem-encrusted necklace in Victor's suit pocket and thought it was a surprise for me, so I pretended not to know. But in the end, I only saw it worn around Emma's neck. At that time, I might have been heartbroken, aggrieved, and sad, but now, looking back, I was as calm as an observer. Lucas's crying and complaining only annoyed me. First of all, I'm no longer your mom. Secondly, if you're sick, you should see a doctor. It's no use looking for me. Time flew by, and after Christmas/New Year, the children returned to school one after another. During the lunch break, I patiently braided the hair of each little girl, held their hands, and took them downstairs to eat. "Teacher, what are we eating today?" Just as I reached the stairway, a mom stopped me. Lucas had grown taller, but he no longer had his former arrogance and was just staring at me blankly. I chose to ignore the eagerness in his eyes. "Teacher, who is he?" A mischievous boy spread his arms and blocked Lucas. "Don't be naughty. She's our teacher, not your mom." Perhaps Lucas had never been treated like this before. He looked at me, his eyes filled with tears, like a frightened bunny. I turned around and led the children downstairs. "Are you all hungry? Let's go eat first." After serving the last child, I felt a small hand tugging at the corner of my clothes. Lucas rubbed his belly and said pitifully, "Mom, I'm hungry." "If you're hungry, go eat." Victor couldn't possibly not know that a child had run so far alone. I continued to sing nursery rhymes with the children, lulling them to sleep. During this time, Lucas stood stubbornly at the door until a child woke up from a nightmare crying, and I quickly went over to comfort him. "Don't be afraid, it's just a nightmare." Who knew Lucas would rush over and push the child away? This was the first time I had seen him so out of control. He had always been strictly disciplined, smart and sensible, knowing how to please everyone like a little adult, but he was the only one who was cold and distant to me, his mom. "I'm so hungry, Mom." He raised his voice. Afraid of waking the other children, I went over and handed him a bowl of porridge. Lucas's eyes lit up, and he took it and ate it in large gulps. In the past, no matter how hard I tried to take care of him, he would only eat a little, his expression unchanging. Lucas was a premature baby, and on the night of the difficult birth, Victor was abroad accompanying his first love to an art exhibition. Holding his weak body, I vowed to give him the best of everything, learning all kinds of recipes, just so he could grow up healthy. Seeing him finish eating, I pulled him aside. "Who told you to come? Does your family know?" He looked up nervously, fidgeting with his fingers, and finally muttered softly, "The school is having a parent-teacher conference and needs parents to attend. You should tell your dad. I'm no longer your mom and have no obligation to attend." I squatted down to look him in the eye, watching tears well up. He was still a child, after all, and finally burst into tears. "Dad said he's busy. Am I not busy? I gave up my entire career just for this family." When Lucas first started elementary school, I went to attend a parent-teacher conference, and when he saw me without makeup, his face immediately darkened. At the end of school, enduring the ridicule of the other children, he frowned. His expression was exactly like Victor's and pulled me to the door. "The other moms are so pretty. You only know how to cook at home. You're so embarrassing." That look was the same as when my biological parents sized up my rough, cheap clothes when I first came home, and it was also very similar to the time I went to a fine dining restaurant with Emma. She coquettishly asked Victor to cut her steak, and he handed it over with a face full of love. I clumsily imitated using a knife and fork, and with too much force, the plate flipped over and sauce spilled all over the floor. Victor handed me a napkin, and I excused myself to go to the restroom, but I heard Emma crying, "Victor, are you going to be taken away by her?" Victor's tone became serious. "Little Emma, I only love you. As for her, if it wasn't for Grandpa's orders." I fled in despair. Only in this way could I pretend not to hear those hurtful words. At 18, I was proud and inferior, desperately trying to please everyone, just to get a shred of love. At 25, with a child, my world revolved around Lucas. Now, I only lived for myself. Seeing that I didn't react, Lucas went from crying loudly to silently shedding tears. At the end of the lunch break, I continued to teach, and he sat quietly in the last row listening. It was ridiculous that I used to tutor him, but he would only push me away coldly. Dad said he would hire top tutors for me. When it was time to do exercises, the children occasionally raised their hands to ask questions, and Lucas also raised his hand, looking at me eagerly. I deliberately ignored him, so he borrowed a notebook from a classmate, clutched a pencil, and leaned over. "Mom, I can't do this problem." His clumsy acting was obvious at a glance. I didn't say anything, took the pencil, and demonstrated on the paper. "Thank you, Mom." He smiled sweetly. Looking up, I saw Victor. I didn't know how long he had been standing by the window, and his lips moved slightly when he saw me. I ignored him, drew the curtains, and continued to help the children with their homework. In the evening, after school, it started to rain lightly. After sending off the last child, it was already dark. When I returned to school, my colleague Ethan smiled and handed me an umbrella. We were the only two teachers in the school, and he had been here for 5 years. "Let's go together." I invited. "Jessica, you've worked hard." At first, we were worried you wouldn't adapt. Of course I adapted. I can't lose to my senior. When I learned that Ethan was my junior from college, I thought it was a wonderful coincidence. We chatted and laughed along the way, and soon arrived at the teacher's dormitory. Suddenly, Lucas rushed under the umbrella. "Mom, you're back." Rainwater wet the hair on his forehead. Having been pestered by him all day, I was a little tired, ignored him, and turned to go inside. "Jessica, you refuse to come back because of this man?" Victor got out of the car and stood in the rain. Ethan was uncomfortable because of his words. I sneered. "Do you think everyone likes to cheat in a marriage like you do?" Victor was stunned, and his emotions became agitated. "Are you really planning to stay in this poor rural elementary school for the rest of your life, abandoning me and our son?" "Jessica, you have to explain this to me clearly today." Some things did need to be clarified. Victor followed me into the dormitory, and the father and son awkwardly sized up the small room. I poured a glass of water and was about to drink it when a large hand gripped my wrist, and the other hand shoved a phone in my face. It was a photo of me and Ethan playing with the children during class, taken when a reporter came to interview us recently, and there was nothing inappropriate in the picture. Victor was furious and pushed me against the wall. "What? Do I have to see you two in bedrooms before you admit it?" I looked at him like he was an idiot. "Victor, after the divorce, we each live our own lives and don't interfere with each other. Isn't that the freedom you wanted?" His eyes were red, and the next second, he flipped me over and pinned me on the bedroom. I felt something touch my ankle, and he took out a Band-Aid from his pocket and carefully stuck it on the wound on the back of my heel, his movements quick and skillful, which made me stunned for a moment. "Injured?" There was genuine concern in his tone. In the 6 years we were together, every time I asked him to change his cologne because I was allergic, he ignored me because Emma liked it. Now, I didn't need this kind of hypocritical concern. "Get out." After kicking them out, I finally got a good night's sleep. For the next 2 weeks, Victor didn't leave, and sometimes he would sit in front of his laptop and work. One night, I heard a knock on the door again. "Mom, I'm afraid of thunder." In the past, I would have held him and lulled him to sleep, but this time I chose to ignore him. Victor was there. He would take care of the child. But when I opened the door the next day, I saw Lucas holding a small pillow, still standing at the door. After a few days, he was no longer as clean and tidy as before. His clothes were wrinkled and covered in dust, looking pitiful. I squatted down. "Did Victor teach you this? Crying and making a fuss, is it useful? How would a child think of these things? Someone must have taught him." Burning with anger, I dragged Lucas to find Victor. Because the company had sponsored this rural elementary school, Victor was very popular here, and the mayor had arranged for him to live in the best house. When I entered, the lights were on, casting a dim yellow glow. Victor was frowning and on the phone, seemingly encountering some trouble, and when he saw us, he rubbed his temples and hung up in a hurry. "The company has something to do. Lucas will stay with you first." I said bluntly, "Take care of your son and don't bother me anymore." As soon as Lucas heard this, he immediately cried and refused to leave. In the past, I would have felt sorry for him, but now tears are only useful to those who care. In the end, Victor impatiently coaxed him into the car. I thought this was the last time I would see him, but I received a call from Victor's grandpa during class, his voice anxious. "Jessica, what happened to Victor and Lucas?" "I heard there was a landslide over there. Grandpa had always been good to me, and his only precious grandson was here." I couldn't bear to tell him about the divorce, so I just reassured him. "Don't worry, Grandpa." Out of gratitude to Grandpa, I went to the village clinic. As soon as I entered, I saw Victor lying on a stretcher, and when he saw me, he struggled to get up. "Jessica, I knew you still cared about me." I pressed his shoulder down. "Don't move if you don't want to die. Where's the doctor?" There was only one doctor busy with other injured people, so I grabbed the gauze and stopped the bleeding for Victor. "Are you a doctor?" Someone asked curiously. I was injured on the mountain once, and my leg was almost crippled. I took care of it myself. Even the doctor was surprised. I joked with a smile. That was a team-building event organized by Victor's company. After sending Lucas to kindergarten, I rushed over, but I saw Emma sitting in the passenger seat, chatting and laughing with him. That day, I was injured and trapped on the mountain, and when Victor came, the first person he carried away was Emma, gently comforting her. It's okay. Don't be afraid. He hurried down the mountain without looking back at me, who was pale and losing too much blood. So the patient can bandage himself. Maybe he can steal my job. The nurse joked. I responded casually, but Victor's face was getting more and more ugly. At that time, you were injured. I thought you weren't that serious. His voice was hoarse. It's all in the past. You asked me why I can't forgive you. I'll tell you now, because you chose to abandon me again and again. As I said this, Victor's face turned paler and paler. His family soon came to pick up Victor. Lucas cried and shouted, "Mom, let's go home." Of course I was going back, but not for him, to get a divorce from Victor. Since I couldn't communicate with him, I would talk to Grandpa and make things clear. Grandpa, my marriage with Victor should end. Forced melons are not sweet, you know that. As soon as he heard this, Grandpa coughed violently. Jessica, did that kid bully you? He immediately picked up his cane and was about to hit Victor. You little bastard, are you being unfair to her? Victor knelt on the ground, silently taking the beating without saying a word. I finally spoke. Grandpa, it's me who wants to leave. I handed the bank book and card I found to Victor, but he refused to take them. In the end, I put them on the table. I haven't spent a penny of the money you've given me over the years. I've never accepted your so-called compensation. Back then, Emma stole my painting to enter the competition, and afraid that I would expose her, Victor used his power to send me abroad. In those years, he transferred money to me every year, perhaps to silence me. In Paris, I worked 3 jobs a day, washing dishes, doing odd jobs, and no matter how hard or poor I was, I never touched that money. Once I accepted it, it would be tantamount to admitting that so-called compensation. I was not wrong, and Victor knew the truth better than anyone. You've harmed her like this, and you still have the nerve to cry? Grandpa learned the truth, clutching his chest in grief. I'm sorry, I'll make up for everything. Victor choked, his face full of pain. A few days later, I understood what he meant by make up. Victor publicly revealed the evidence of Emma's plagiarism to the media. The evidence was irrefutable, and she went from being a well-known artist in the industry to a plagiarist that everyone denounced overnight. On the day I left the city, Emma found me in a spacious and bright coffee shop. She no longer had her former radiance. I ordered 2 coffees, and when the waiter brought them, she pushed the plate away. I'm pregnant. I'm afraid it will affect the baby. She had less of her usual arrogance and more unease in her eyes, as if she wanted to show off. Then I wish you a happy family. This time, my blessing was sincere. Emma's face changed suddenly, and I turned to see Victor, who had appeared at some point, pick up the cup of still steaming coffee and pour it on her head. It was the first time I had seen Emma so embarrassed. Victor, how can you treat me like this for her sake? She ran away crying. Jessica, she's not pregnant with my child. She's lying. There's nothing between us. Victor was busy explaining. I glanced at my watch. I have to catch a flight. Do you hate me so much that you have to leave? His posture seemed to have been drained of all strength. Don't overthink it. I don't love you, and I don't hate you either. I interrupted sarcastically and got into the car. Victor's car followed annoyingly all the way. Before going through security, I saw him and Lucas standing at the departure gate, motionless. A passerby asked to borrow a pen, and I casually took one out of my bag. No need to return it. He thanked me excitedly and hurried off to catch his flight. Victor's face instantly darkened. It was the pen he had given me when he was going abroad to attend summer camp, and there was a bad traffic jam, and I ran all the way, my back soaked in sweat. He handed me a postcard awkwardly, with "To Jessica" written on it. I smiled and said, I like it, and a complex emotion flashed in his eyes. Now, I was just giving away a casual pen. What was he being awkward about? When the plane passed through the clouds, everything on the ground became insignificant. Like the past, I had finally left it behind. After Jessica left, Victor found her diary in the trash can and learned how she had spent those years in Paris. Later, she went from being an unknown painter to gradually gaining some renown in the art world. Strangely enough, even though Victor had money, he never dared to look for her again, because she had said, Please don't bother me anymore. The most out-of-control time was when he rushed to the mountains overnight, but hid at the door, watching her smile at someone else, a happiness she had never had when she was with him. She painted her experiences there and sold them, donating the proceeds to children in the western states, and he was the silent buyer. The mayor had invited him, saying he wanted to thank him in person. That day, he waited nervously, but when he saw her walking out side by side with Ethan, he quickly ducked back into his car. "Where's the buyer?" he heard her ask. "Just left," said the mayor. The wind and rain were fierce, and the fog was thick. After Lucas grew up, he still persistently wrote letters to her. The mountain roads were long, and it took a month for the letters to arrive. In his letters, he shared his life. "Mom, I'm doing well in my homework. Mom, I started learning piano today." His handwriting changed from clumsy to neat, but he never received a reply. The night of Jessica's art exhibition in Paris, Victor canceled all his meetings, an important negotiation. Friends said he was crazy. He only asked his secretary to book 2 economy class tickets, and he flew to Paris overnight with Lucas. It was snowing that night, and the streetlights flickered. The man covered the boy's mouth and stood quietly in the snow, watching the painting inside the glass window, a family of 3 smiling brightly. So, she had once longed for such happiness. His heart felt like a hole had been chiseled into it, and a blizzard roared through. From then on, the person he loved vanished like morning mist, never to be found again.